chills. All right, we're back. Cool. Hey, everybody. All right, so it's time for our study group time. So we are reading A Course in Miracles, the complete and annotated edition. For those of you who've been following along, I think we're at page 101. So I think that we're at page 101. After we finish this section, then I'm going to take a break from A Course in Miracles because I want to focus on another text. And so after this, we will take a break from this, and then we'll be focusing on another book for a little bit, and then we'll come back to this. So for those of you who have been following along, what we do in the study groups, we basically read books. We read a book, and then we go through the content, and then I will stop, give my commentary. I will also break down concepts and ideas that are expressed in the material in the way that I understand it and have grasped it. Also, you get to ask me about spiritual matters, and you get to ask me about the content as well. So if you have questions regarding spiritual matters or the book material, feel free to ask those questions. If you're tuning in because you want a reading, unfortunately that was in the last hour, so I will not be doing any readings during this hour. This is only study group time, okay? So for anybody who may pop in after the fact or pop in and did not hear me say that this is not the time for readings, just so y'all know that there's going to be people who pop in late and don't know what's going on. They're going to assume I'm doing readings. They're going to start asking their questions. People catch an attitude with me, then they can catch an attitude with me. That's fine. But we're going to be focusing on the books and stuff like that. So, hey, Monica, I'm sorry, Mama, but I just had no personal readings. This is just a study group. So we're not doing any readings today. So you have to come back on Friday, okay? All right, guys. So like I said, for your questions, you can post them in the comment section below for spiritual matters or topics regarding the material. So the Course in Miracles, for those of you who don't know what the book was about, a woman by the name of Helen Schumann, who was a psychiatrist, and she worked for a facility, I think, in the upper Northeast. She was born Jewish, and then she switched and became a Catholic, and then after that, then she became a atheist. So after that, she turned into an atheist. But she started having a bunch of dreams. She didn't understand what the dreams meant, but she felt inspired to write down what she was experiencing in the dreams. So the book of Course in Miracles is basically her taking dictation, and she claims is Jesus communicating with her and sharing insight and knowledge with her. A lot of the information in the book, it's really interesting. It's very, in some instances, it's very complex. It's not the easiest thing to read from a spiritual perspective because there's a lot of things you kind of have to go in knowing to kind of get the most out of it, or you'll only get like a surface level understanding of the wisdom that's embarked on through the book. But it is a really good book, and so this is her writing down what Jesus is telling her, and then she might go into some complex ideas based on psychiatry or psychology just because that is her background, and so the idea is that she would understand it or know more about that. Okay. Before I get started, let me see what's, hey, Danny. Hey, Cindy. All right. Let's see. Okay. Saying hi to everybody. Saying hi. Hey, everybody. Cool. All right. Just want to make sure there aren't any questions to start. So that way I can go ahead and get going into the material girl. It's study, Kieran. It's study. So, yeah, it's a study group time. All right, so we're on page, again, like I said, 101, I think. Yeah, 101. Yeah. So the section is the mastery of love. We have already said that the basic conflict is one between love and fear, and that the proper organization of the psyche rests on a lack of level confusion. The section on psychic energy should be reread very carefully because it is particularly likely to be misinterpreted until this section has been completed. It has already been said that you cannot control fear because you yourself made it. Your belief in it renders it out of your control by definition. For this reason, any attempt to resolve the basic conflict through the concept of mastery of fear is meaningless. In fact, it asserts the power of fear by the simple assumption that it need be mastered at all. The essential resolution rests entirely on the mastery of love. So, in other words, with us existing in this physical form, in this reality matrix or this reality construct that we call the reality, the world. There's a balance there. There's kind of a balance between love and fear. So when you think of emotions like joy, enthusiasm, excitement, you can put that in the category of love. When you think of things such as hatred, anger, rage, jealousy, that's all part of the fear complex. So we've got love and we've got fear. By default, before we come into physical form, we are love-based beings. We are based in that higher vibrational frequency. We're based in that higher state of being. When we come into physical form, we essentially give up our comforts of that state. We give up the comfort of that state to come into this reality so that we can have an experience that is important for our soul to have. So all of the things that I've gone through in my life, the good and the bad, that's all been, not every single thing, but there are a lot of themes and there are a lot of opportunities that have shown up, that I've had experiences of this, had this experience, had that experience. Again, both positive and negative. It's not just all the positive experiences that I had. It's also the negative ones, or the painful ones, the ones of suffering. All of that is useful because it allows for full awareness and understanding. And so my soul had a plan when I came into physical form. I forgot about that. As a child, I reconditioned as a human being in this reality, not fully understanding ourselves in that form. And I played into the part. I became a part. I became the part. I became Ferny. And so all of you have done the same thing. You all came in with a plan. There were certain experiences or opportunities that you were going, that you designed into the experience of your life. You designed into it. So there's some things that you were supposed to experience or that you were meant to have and experience in this lifetime. But, once we're down here, it's like anyone's game, because it's like once you take an actor, put him on the stage, they may play the part, but they may also improvise. They may do other things that are not part of the script. And that's what happens as we get down here. We have that free will. There's a pull, a summoning within all of us that takes us along the path and along the journey that we are destined to take. And if we pay attention to that path, if we pay attention to that pull, we will have affirmations. We will have things happen that affirm to us that is how it's supposed to be. So you end up encountering a lot of synchronicities, a lot of events like that, things that just kind of happen that are out of the ordinary. And those are representations of like, you're on track, good luck, good job. So when you see those like representations of repeating numbers, when you see things just kind of synchronizing in a way, those are all reminders and representations of the fact that we are following the path that we were destined to take. We can have other experiences outside of that plan, but we still have some things that we're meant to take. You can go to school and focus on being a psychologist, or focus on being a doctor. But if you take an extracurricular course, or if you take some extra, things, extra classes, then that's extra. That's all extra. So we have a lot of extra that we have when we're down here because of the free will. But most of it, there's still a lot that's very scripted that we're supposed to experience specifically. So what they're talking about in this instance is the idea of having that balance between love and fear. When most of us come down here, because our memory is pretty much wiped, we don't realize that this is not the reality. This is just a stage that we're all playing our parts in. Because we don't fully realize that we give into the reality of the part, we basically become the conditioned version of ourselves. That is a reduced perspective. That is a reduced form of ourselves as soul and as ourselves as God, because we're all God in form. So when we give into the part, when we fall into that, we tend, it can get tricky, because if we don't have enough of a conditioned idea regarding states of love, and states of love include compassion, being nurturing, supportive, energy, etc. That's all part of that. If we don't have enough conditioning that kind of aligns us to maintain that equilibrium, we tend to experience a lot more fear-based mindsets, a lot of fear-based experiences. So the idea of, I don't have enough money, I need more. I don't have enough love, I need more. I have no love, I need more love. Or I've been rejected by love. So we have these experiences that really do a number on us. And with those experiences, most people will find themselves submitting to that reality, and they get into a perpetual cyclical loop where they're repeating the same patterns, they're repeating the same state of being. State of being being your thoughts, your emotions, your actions or reactions. So you repeat the same state of being, and that maintains and supports that state of fear and that mindset around fear. And then people get stuck in that and they don't know how to get out of that. And so this is talking about that balance there, and how we tend to think, oh, we need to control fear, or we need to become a master with fear, and blah, 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 blah. But what they're saying is, no, you need to master love, not fear. Fear is an experience, it's a tool. It's just a tool for us. Love is the authentic nature, the authentic way that we exist without all of this extra in the physical form. In the interim, conflict is inevitable. The reason for this is the strangely illogical position in which you have placed yourself. Since we have frequently emphasized that correction must be applied within the level that error occurs, it should be clear that the miracle must be illogical because its purpose is to correct the illogical and restore order. Two concepts which cannot coexist are nothing and everything. To whatever extent one is believed in, the other has been abolished. In the conflict, fear is really nothing and love is really everything. The unwillingness to let one's darkness be seen or to submit error to light is a way of denying that the separation ever occurred. Like all pseudo solutions, this kind of distorted thinking is very creative but false. The separation has occurred. To deny this is merely to misuse denial. However, to concentrate on error is merely a further misuse of legitimate psychic mechanisms. The true corrective procedure, which has already been described as the proper use of the spiritual eye or true vision, is to accept the error temporarily, but only as an indication that immediate correction is mandatory. This establishes a state of mind in which the atonement can be accepted without delay. It is worth repeating that ultimately there is no compromise possible between everything and nothing. The purpose of time is essentially to serve as a device by which all compromise in this respect can be abolished. It seems to be abolished by degrees precisely because time itself involves a concept of intervals which does not really exist. The faulty use of creation has made this necessary as a corrective device. And God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believeth on him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Needs only one slight correction to be entirely meaningful in this context. It should read, and God so loved the world and God so loved the world that he gave it to his only begotten Son. It should be noted that God has begotten only one Son. If you believe that all of the minds that God created are his sons, and if you also believe that the sonship is one, then every mind must be a son of God, or an integral part of the sonship. You do not find the concept of and I'll stop there for a second because I want to comment on that. So remember that we are all God in form. We all are God in reduced capacity for the purpose of experiencing through this perspective, through this personality, your personality, etc. So we're all God. And the only way for a God to exist that has all-knowing, all-beingness is by actually all-knowing and all-beingness, meaning the witnessing part of our lives, that is God. So it's not like a separate thing. People like to make God this separate thing. There's no separation. There's really no separation. It's us and God. We're all part of the same thing. We just believe the separation because by the conditions we experience here in the physical world, we find ourselves suffering and having a sense of lack or disconnect or not enough of. And whenever we are psychologically, because you can call it more of a psychological gain for us here, being in this form, when we put ourselves in this form, we immediately just detach and disconnect in a delusional way, meaning we kind of give ourselves a sense of delusion about being separate from God so that we can feel ourselves as an individual. This is the point of the ego. The ego's job is to remind us that we're separate from God so we can maintain the personality complex that is who we are, to have the experience that we're meant to have. Without the ego, we would not have a clear understanding of being separate. So the ego is just a mechanism that produces that effect for us. But there's no actual separation. It's just the idea of separation, the perceived idea, the perceived reality of separation. And what they're talking about here is this like good and evil, like this whole like one side versus the other. When you look at the holy books and you look at a lot of the ancient writings, a lot of the material was not designed for the lay person. It was not designed to be read by someone who did not spend their entire life understanding the ideas and the concepts and the meaning behind the words. Most people take everything that they find in the holy books as word of mouth or as like direct. And that's where people get tripped up, because they basically are missing the point of the material. There's more to it than that. There's more depth to it than that. It's almost like having a bottle of water and trying to like drink the water by just licking the outside of it. That's what people do with religion, especially with like the religions that are based in the books of Moses and Christianity and Islam. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about the knowledge and the wisdom. And so people are trying to grasp God, grasp our place in the universe by licking the bottle to quench their thirst. But in order for you to really get what that is for you, to gain from that, you have to open and unlock, and then you can access. And most of the people who were responsible for the holy books back when they were just being assembled or being produced, they understood this. They understood that the average person was not in a position to understand the material properly. It required a unique individual. It's just like with let's say a carpenter. If you don't have any background in carpentry, and then I give you some wood and a couple of power tools, you're probably going to make a hot ass mess. You're probably not going to be able to produce something that has fine quality and a lot of usefulness. You might be able to make something, but it's not going to have the same level of craftsmanship as a carpenter would be able to produce. Same thing with the holy books, same thing with the spiritual wisdoms. And we have a lot of people who read the stuff, don't understand it, but still regurgitate and try to live their lives based on like the literal understanding of that material. And it gets sketchy, it gets difficult. So in what's happening right now is we go through these cyclical patterns with conscious beings on this planet. Conscious beings, conscious groups go through these cyclical patterns, because when we get to the point where we are human, we have a duplicitous mechanism that exists within us. Animals don't question whether they want to act out of defense or love or prey. Animals don't question themselves. They're very much, I'm hungry, I'm going to take a life to eat, or I'm hungry, I'm going to eat this off of a tree or whatever. And so animals don't have that duplicitous nature. Any animals that do have a duplicitous type of being, it's because they've been conditioned or trained into that because of the people who they were entrusted in the care of. But they don't have that duplicitous nature. Most animals in this world do not have a duplicitous sense about themselves. We are duplicitous. By default, we have a duplicitous sense of being because we represent the dualistic nature of creation and the uncreation, of the affirmed and of the potential. And so we have a duplicitous sense about ourselves. This is what exists within us. This is the good and the bad, or the little demon, the little devil, and then the little angel. That image of like the little angel and the little demon and the little angel. Like, that's a representation of our duplicitous beingness. And we have to choose. We have to decide and choose based on love or fear. Are we going to choose out of love, or are we going to choose out of fear? And in our lives, we always have experiences that are going to put us into situations where we have to make that choice, a conscious choice, over and over and over again. So the idea of like good versus bad, the final like rapture, or the final like the evil versus the devil versus God, that is all a symbolic representation of this cycle that exists, that happens throughout history. When you have conscious beings like ourselves, human, who do have a duplicitous nature, who do have and represent this dualistic aspect of the divine, of creation and of the non-creation, we have to choose, what we're going to align with. And there's our higher loving nature, and then there's the darker fearful nature. So groups like ourselves, like especially right now, we're in another cycle right now. We're about to peak in another cycle. Throughout history, there are civilizations and groups of people, and at certain points in history, there are these, I wouldn't call it a battle, because I think it's a bad way of describing it. Let's call it a point of reflection, a point of self-awareness. Because the only way we are aware of ourselves is by what we engage with, what we encounter, what we support, what we turn away from. And so we know ourselves through these interactions, through our relationships with each other and with the whole. So at a certain point in history, groupings or civilizations go through these periods where they have to account for themselves. You can call this a reckoning, you can call this a rapture, you can call this whatever you want to call it. But it's essentially, we have to judge ourselves. And it is a requirement, because if we judge ourselves, and we judge ourselves based on the way we react to each other, or the way we react to ourselves, if we judge ourselves in a way where it is more predominantly based in fear, then what you will have is a kind of domino effect, and there will be a collapse of that civilization, or a collapse of that system. If you go more into the form of love, and then remember that we are all source and we are all part of one, we are one, and then you start to operate from that perspective, then that represents a completely different scenario and a completely different pathway for the group or the civilization. And so right now we are at a juncture, and this is a cyclical pattern. We go through this every 12,000 years. We go through this every now and then. And right now we're going through another period, another phase of this, where we are required to judge ourselves. And now that the only way to judge ourselves is to see what we truly are. All that we've just gone through in the last year, 2 years, 4 years, all that we have gone through is forcing us to confront ourselves and to look at ourselves, not just ourselves individually, but ourselves as a collective, ourselves as individuals, ourselves as family members, ourselves as children, as parents. We're having to self-examine, take stock, and make some choices. And right now there's a lot of conflict, because it's not like there's like 90% one way and then like 10% the other way. It's pretty much in the middle somewhere there. And so this is definitely a point of interest for our soul, because we are having the opportunity to judge ourselves. And how we judge ourselves is how we will react. There will be a lot of people who judge ourselves and react in a way that they will produce more damnation, more suffering, more miscreations out of the fear. There will be people who look at us and see what we've done, and also acknowledge that we've really messed up a lot of ways, and we need to be accountable to this. And the only way to be accountable is to just own what is, but not only own for ourselves, own for the others as well. You basically either have to look at yourself and your neighbor, and then turn your back on your neighbor to turn in the idea that you're turning towards yourself. Or you have to see yourself and your neighbor, realize that we're both part of the same being. We both deserve love. We both deserve nurturing. We both deserve to be okay. And even if it is heartbreaking to be hurt by our neighbors and those others, it's still part of the process of ascension. It's still part of the process of evolving to that next level. And that's the hardest part of a lot of civilizations. The idea that most people and most conditioned civilizations have is that, if I don't agree with you or we're not on the same side, then you're my enemy and I must squash you. That doesn't evolve the civilization. It doesn't evolve the people or the energy or the mindset. You have to see the other as part of you and realize I can't turn my back on myself, but at the same time, I don't really know how to I don't really know how to give them peace, but all I can offer is what I can offer for myself and offer to them as well. And then if they see the truth and the authenticity in that, then they will realign and realize what they've done. If they don't, then they will simply continue to perpetuate the cycle of fear and the cycle of feeling detached, disconnected, feeling like God's punishing you, feeling like everything is about fear, punishment, suffering, etc. So it's almost like a repeat, and it starts the cycle all over again. So we're in that period right now. We're going through a cyclical stage right now, and we are being required by ourselves as God to judge ourselves and to act out of awareness of self as individuals and self as collective. This is not going to be an easy thing for us. And so that whole good versus evil, God versus the devil, this is what it is. This is what it is, because fear is the devil. Fear is representation of that. God is the representation of love. So that's all the way it's going to show up. We're not going to have demons flying out of the sky to punish people. We're not going to have the idea and the stories in the biblical text and in some of the old stories are based on concepts and representations, symbolic representations of that struggle in humanity, in the self. When you look at the story of Adam and Eve, all of the characters and players in that story are the same person. They just represent different parts of the same being, but they're all the same. It's not 5 or 6 different beings. It's not God is one being or one person, Adam is another person, Eve is another person, the serpent is another person. No, they're all the same, represented by these different characters in the story. And if you understand the meaning and the depth of the story, you will immediately recognize that and say, oh my God, that's so obvious. But we get so caught up in the specifics, there had to be a female naming. There had to be okay. So, and that's the problem, is that people buy into the literal understanding of something. They don't actually see it in the way that it was designed and meant to be seen, meant to be understood. Those who have ears, let them hear. Those who have eyes, let them see. So there's more to it than all of that. The concept of minus numbers has always been regarded as a mathematical rather than an actual expedient. Yet it represents a major limitation on mathematics as presently understood. Any statement which implies degrees of difference in negation is essentially meaningless. What can replace this negative approach is a recognition of the fact that as long as one part, which is the same as 1,000,000 or 10 or 8,000 parts of the sonship, is missing, it is not complete. In the divine psyche, the Father and the Holy Spirit are not incomplete at all. The sonship has the unique faculty of believing in error, of incompleteness, if it so elects. By the way, we are all the sonship. We represent humanity. The human race represents the sonship. However, it is quite apparent that the sonship has the unique faculty of believing in error or incompleteness, if it so elects. However, it is quite apparent that so to elect is to believe in the existence of nothingness. The correction of this error is the atonement. We have already briefly spoken about readiness, but there are some additional awarenesses which might be helpful. Readiness is nothing more than the prerequisite for accomplishment. The two should not be confused. As soon as a state of readiness occurs, there is always some will to accomplish, but this is by no means undivided. The state does not imply more than the potential for a shift of will. Confidence cannot develop fully until mastery has been accomplished. We begin this section with an attempt to correct the fundamental human error that fear can be mastered. The correction was that only love can be mastered. Even if you are ready for revelation, though that does not mean that you have in any way mastered that form of communication, mastery of love necessarily involves a much more complete confidence in the ability than you have as yet attained. Readiness, however, is at least an indication that you believe this is possible. This is only the beginning of confidence. In case this be misunderstood as a statement that an enormous amount of time will be necessary between readiness and mastery, I would again remind you that the time and space are under my control. So we'll stop there. And then that's where I'm going to leave off. And then next week we'll start a new book. So what do you guys think about what we've been talking about? So I'm going to jump over here to see what do you guys think about this. And by the way, guys, just so you know, if you're tuning in for a reading, this is not our reading hour. That was in the last hour. This is our study group time. So if you're tuning in because you want a reading from a loved one in spirit, or you want to ask me a psychic question about your life, that was in the last hour. So you'll have to come and connect with me on Friday and try to get on Friday. Okay. All right. So let me go through here. Cassidy, do you feel that are three waves of volunteers? I think that when it comes to the idea, I know what you're talking about. Like as far as like waves of like people who are Okay, thank you. So I don't know if it's three exactly, because what they're telling me is that it's not so much that there are waves of volunteers, but what happens is that everything is long planned. So there are plans put into place that don't always happen overnight. Sometimes some of these plans take decades, sometimes centuries, depending on what's going on. There are things that people had experiences with 300, 500, 1,000 years ago that would not even happen in their lifetimes, but would come up in the future, because people through the gift of prophecy are able to sense and tune in and see this. So there's different pre-paving periods happening, and a pre-paving period is basically preparation of a desired state of experience. And so in order for a desired state of experience on a collective level for the human race to happen, there are individuals who came forth, who existed in a human body, that helped to pave the way, to pre-pave, to prepare certain aspects of humanity, certain conditions within humanity, certain understandings within the mind of humanity. People have come along, and then that's like a first like wave. You can call it a wave if you want to. And then there's another set, and then there's another set. There is never not you call them volunteers that are engaged in their operations on this planet. So there are several, in fact. I think when I talked to Aja about this, Aja said there was always 13 masters present at one time, meaning that there are always 13 masters who exist on the planet who act and serve as a facilitator for a shift in knowledge or wisdom or energy or awareness and understanding. Like there's always 13. And I was like, why 13? They're just this. I was like, okay. So there's always 13 present on the planet. And so if one dies, there will be a new one born. So there's always 13. And I still to this day haven't gotten that answer yet. I'm waiting for Aja to give me the answer to that. But there are 13. And this is the number that's represented. That doesn't mean that there's only 13 good people on the planet. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is there are 13 highly evolved masters who are operating within the idea that they are human. So they are doing what they're meant to do, and what they are doing is going to facilitate and be a part of the pre-paving process for humanity as we move forward. Because even though we operate as individuals, some people may, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, everyone's evolved in a different stage. Everyone's at a different stage of evolution, not just from a physical standpoint, but also from a mental, emotional, psychological standpoint. And so as individuals, we all have our own individual paths and our own individual cycles. As a collective, we also have paths and cycles, and so we are basically we're moving in the direction of a peak period for the current cycle. Yeah, like a crossroads for humanity. I haven't read that book, Cassidy. I haven't read that one yet. I haven't heard about that book yet, so that would be a new one for me. I'm actually about to, you can see like back there, I usually have my bookshelf with my Buddha and everything. It's actually over here now because I just moved everything, so I'll just show you right now so you can see it. So, see, it's all right there right now. And the reason why it's right there is because for two reasons. One is I needed to, one of my cousins gave me that television. It's been sitting in a closet, and it's for like guests when guests come over. And so I'm prepping for my partner's mother because I want her to visit, and so I want to get like the space just prepped for her, even though we're like 3 months in advance. But I like want to make sure everything's going to be done. So I'm about to get a second bookshelf that's half the size of that one, that's going to be behind me with my Buddha and stuff, so that everything is on the floor behind me. So. But I'm like doing a little bit of reorganizing here and trying to get everything looking a certain way. Soy con Leon. I love you, Ferny. I'm gonna book something with you soon. I love you too, sweetheart. By the way, I'm really enjoying watching your posts because they always they're very uplifting, so I appreciate that. Even though you don't just FYI, I never expect you to be that way 24/7, so you're more than welcome to be human. You don't always have to be like this version of yourself that you think people are only going to accept. But I really do enjoy your posts because I feel like they're very uplifting, and sometimes you just put a smile on my face. So Miss Rosemary, is God God or is the universe God? Both. If I go out and I grab a handful of dirt, that's God. That's what it is right there. If I stare at the sky and I watch the clouds go by, that's God. If I feel a little bit of a beat increase when I look at my partner smile, that's God. When today my friend gave birth to her child, and the process of that's God. All of it is God. So what distinguishes people's ideas about God is not that God changes on them, it's that they don't always grasp the fullness of God. I had a client earlier, and she was asking me that she wanted to become more spiritual, and that she's been kind of following one religious path, but she wanted to know if it's okay to do that. And I'm like, you can do whatever you want. I was like, no religion is perfect. No religion has it put together. Religion is just a tool. It's a mechanism for understanding God, but none of them have it 100%. I want to say that when it comes to like understanding God and the universe and all that is, religions, in my opinion, only cover like 10-15% of the reality of the situation. They don't even fully grasp everything that's available to us. So I don't put all of my chips into one religion just because it's just a tool. It's almost like buying one pair of shoes and wearing that whole pair of shoes for the entirety of your life. At some point, the shoes fall apart, they tear, they rip, they become uncomfortable, but people still hold to those traditions and rituals. People still hold to their religion even though it no longer serves them because they're conditioned to just fall in line. And that's not the way I feel. I feel that, when it comes to faith and when it comes to a relationship with God, no religion comes close to that. Your relationship with Source, with God, is your relationship with Source or God, and it's not for me to tell you what that relationship should be like. You have to decide what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to embrace, what you're willing to be open to when it comes to that relationship. And I will say from experience, the minute that I stopped putting God in a box of religious doctrine, all of a sudden that box blew up, and out of it came this massive experience of love and of connection and of acceptance that I've never had in my life. And not only that, but it allowed me access to information and to knowledge that I didn't have access to before. I'm still limited though. I'm still human. I only can do so much. My brain can only process so much data. So there's no way I will be able to embrace and encompass the understanding of God. But I understand a lot more now than I did before, and I can access a lot more now than I used to when I put God in a box, because God does not belong in a box. God is not a boxable thing. The box is just a way for people to kind of grasp it and understand it to the best of their abilities. So that's the reason why I don't do that. But yes, it's all of the above. People are still asking personal questions. Oh, I don't know where I'm going with this. There it goes. Okay. All right, let me go over here. We got a troll trying to get everybody to private message them on Facebook and YouTube. All right, so these are all personal questions. Yeah, so personal questions were in the last hour, guys. So sorry about that. All right, guys, I think that's it. Oh, I get it, Sarah Baker. Just here for emotional support and energy for you, that is. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Yeah, this is how we help each other out. This is how we understand God and Source, is by connecting with each other, by helping each other understand the things that each of us have encountered and experienced. And so that's the best approach to understanding and to connecting with Source, and with being able to channel and bring through more information and knowledge. So, all right, guys, I'm out of time. I love you all. I will be back on Friday for our Conversations with God book. But until then,